I work night security at a haunted warehouse. What I discovered will haunt me forever. I never should have opened that door. The night was thick with uncertainty, shadows whispering to me as I made my rounds inside the warehouse. I was just a night security guard, trying to make a living. The air was stale, mingling with an off smell of mold and rust. I thought I knew everything about this place. I was wrong. That IT started like any other shift. I walked through the dimly lit aisles, the flickering fluorescent lights casting long, eerie shadows against the walls. The creaks of the old building echoed like distant whispers. I'd been feeling it for weeks, an unease that crawled up my spine, making my skin prickle with dread. And then, there was that door at the far end. Every time I passed it, I felt an odd pull, an undeniable urge to know what lay behind it. And yet, it felt cursed. I heard stories from the old-timers, tales of sightings and the inexplicable happenings that made my skin crawl. But I never believed in ghosts until tonight. The air turned cold as I approached the door, my breath visible in the suddenly frigid space. I hesitated, dread closing in around me. I should have listened to those feelings. A loud crash echoed from behind the door, rattling my nerves. I leaned in closer. The shadows seemed to dance in my peripheral vision. A distant, low whisper made my heart race. "Let me in!" Panic surged through me. What was happening? I pressed my ear against the cold metal, and suddenly, the door creaked open a crack. A dark void yawned before me, deeper than the ink of a starless night. A chill seized my chest, suffocating. What lurked within? Voices, muffled and frantic, whispered my name. I wanted to run, to flee from whatever awaited, but curiosity clawed at me. As I took a step inside, the temperature dropped further, a frigid wind whooshing past my ears. Then, the door slammed shut behind me, sealing me in darkness. My heart thundered as objects began shifting around me, a crate toppling over with a deafening crash. I spun around, my pulse racing. The darkness was alive. A figure emerged from the shadows, gliding toward me with unnatural speed. I felt paralyzed, caught in a web of fear and uncertainty. A scream clawed at my throat, but it wouldn't come. All I could do was stare into the abyss, the figure's face shrouded in mist. What had I reopened? What had I invited into my world? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure coalesced from the shadows, its form barely distinguishable from the swirling darkness, yet I could feel its hunger, a palpable presence that tightened around me like a noose. My breath quickened, and I stumbled back until I hit a cold metal shelving unit. As it swayed ominously, the phantom moved closer, soundlessly sliding across the floor, and my instinct screamed for me to flee, but escape was impossible in this suffocating darkness. The air felt thick with malevolence, and I could hear my own heart like a drumbeat in the eerie silence. "What do you want?" I managed to whisper, my voice trembling, echoing back to me from the void. The figure paused, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw a glint of eyes, bright and penetrating. Then it extended a hand, not in greeting but in an invitation filled with twisted promise. The world around me shifted, the walls seemed to pulse, and the cacophony of whispers grew louder, surrounding me like angry hornets. They were calling my name, each version of it dripping with malice. "Come play with us." The voices crooned. My mind reeled, grasping at the linings of sanity as shadows flickered and thickened, closing in. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body was frozen, paralyzed by the ancient terror that lived within these walls. Abruptly, more movements caught my attention, a faint flashing light just beyond the shadowed figure, a desperate flicker in the blackness. A headache throbbed behind my eyes, the voices clamoring for control, echoing memories of fear from years past. Desperation clawed at the corners of my mind. I turned my back to the figure, feeling my way against the cold, damp walls, pausing only to absorb the chaos escalating around me. That I stumbled into the beeping of an old machine, its dull glow flickering. It seemed a stark contrast to the suffocating darkness. I peered into the deep shadows and saw more than just the figure stalking toward me. There were scattered remnants of what had clearly been here before: torn clothes, crackled photographs, and a shattered mirror, its shards glistening ominously under the dim light. Suddenly, my pulse quickened again. Something was moving within the mirror's shards. I leaned closer, my breath hitching in my throat as reflections of the past began to coalesce: figures, shapes, old faces twisted in terror and agony. They clawed at the glass as if trying to escape. "Help us!" they cried harmoniously, their mouths moving in silent screams, but the most chilling revelation was their eyes hollow, hopeless, and endlessly hollow. As the dark figure loomed ever closer, I stumbled backward into the wall again, trying to tear my gaze from the writhing reflections. But it was too late. I felt the cold grip of fingers brushing against my arm, icy and bone-like, igniting my panic. They dragged me back, closer to the explosion of shadow and despair, and I realized that the voices were not merely echoing in the void. They were trapped within the fabric of this place. With a swift motion, the dark figure lunged, wrapping its hand around my throat, and as I gasped for breath, the whispers morphed into a sing-song tune: "You will join us, you will be one of us." The weight of despair crashed down upon me, suffocating me as I struggled in its grip. Just as my vision blackened at the edges, the disturbing rhythm of the echoing voices broke off suddenly. There was a pause, an oppressive silence hanging thick, and then a new sound: Emergita's soft shuffling, methodical and relentless, coming from beyond the door I had entered. It was a different sort of voice, deeper, more resonant, and now, it too called my name. "You need to listen." A chill crawled into my spine, and with a surge of adrenaline, I pulled free from the figure's grasp, darting toward the door that had trapped me not moments before. But just as I reached for the handle, it rattled violently, a tangible force working against me, with the whispers beginning again: "Don't leave, come back." With every ounce of strength I had, I yanked it open. The sight that met my eyes froze me in place. What lay before me wasn't the sanctuary I had imagined, but a hallway that stretched into infinite darkness, and an impossibly familiar face stood at the far end, illuminated under an unseen light, arms outstretched, beckoning with an eerie smile. It was someone I recognized, but I couldn't remember from where. As the darkness behind me roared alive, and shadows began to swirl toward me, I felt a magnetic pull to that familiar figure, the echo of their voice now soft and calling: "Come home." I stepped forward, my mind screaming for me to turn back, to run, but my feet betrayed me, eager to discover the truth behind that beckoning smile, dragging me closer to the abyss. The darkness clung to my skin like oil, the air thickening with a stench of mildew and something far worse: an unshakable sense of despair. Each step toward that elusive figure felt as if I were trudging through thick mud, my heart pounding furiously against my ribs, an internal drum signaling my impending doom. "Come home." The voice resonated again, wrapped in nostalgia, yet laced with an unsettling sense of betrayal. It echoed down the corridor, bouncing off unseen walls, weaving itself into my thoughts until it was undeniable: I had to reach that face. The figure remained distant but oddly compassionate, a magnetic force pulling me closer despite the growing dread swirling around me. As I took another step forward, a sharp crack echoed from behind me, drawing my attention. The dark figure, a mass of shadows, had reformed, now expanding, taking on grotesque shapes that flickered like dying stars. Each movement released a chorus of screams, and I felt the very fabric of this place ripple with rage. "Don't follow her!" it howled, its voice distorted, invading my mind, clawing at the remnants of my sanity, but my will wavered under the weight of that haunting familiarity, pushing me to take another step forward. I forced myself to focus, squinting into the darkness, trying to decipher the details of that face. Recognition swept over me like frost, chilling my veins as memories fluttered like moths caught in a spider's web. "No, no!" I gasped, finally realizing the truth. The face belonged to my sister, Claudia, lost to me for so many years. She had vanished the night we last celebrated her birthday, her laughter echoing down the same corridors I now traversed. Doubt and horror intermingled as I forged ahead, questioning whether this was my sister calling me back or something more sinister. "Help me." The please sank into my bones, the importance of her words sharpening my focus. "Please. You don't understand." As I approached, the corridor warped, walls bending and distorting like waves crashing upon a rocky shore. It felt as if the space itself twisted in malaise, the farther I ventured. The light illuminating Claudia flickered, casting shadows that danced around me, trying to engulf me in their eternal embrace. "Stay with me, just a little longer," she urged, desperation creeping into her voice, but a tendril of doubt tightened in my gut. This couldn't be her. Claudia wouldn't look that way, wouldn't sound so broken that I hesitated, caught in pause, and the flickering light illuminated something behind her. The remnants of the past, trapped within the folds of fabric and time, swirled around her. I saw silhouettes of our childhood, disjointed memories replayed, birthdays where she glowed with joy, followed by endless searching for her missing smile. They mingled with dark fragments, a gnawing sense of sorrow cutting open wounds I thought healed. Then, between the bright memories and shadows, a face emerged. A figure cloaked in darkness, lurking behind her with piercing eyes the color of midnight. Its lips curled into a malevolent grin, a mocking caricature of human emotion. "Let her go," it hissed, a voice dripping with malice, ripping away the sweet memories, replacing them with twisted echoes of sorrow. "You were never enough for her. You'll lose her again." "Stop it!" I screamed, reaching for Claudia, but the darkness surged, materializing like a wall between us. The floor underfoot rippled like water as if the warehouse itself writhed in agony, its foundations shuddering with unspeakable torment. Claudia's expression twisted. "You must leave, now. This place, it's not what you think. You have to escape before it consumes you like it did." Her voice trembled, filling with terror as her figure flickered, her smile replaced with a frantic look that clawed at my heart. Just then, I felt icy fingers wrap around my throat, squeezing tight while the figure in the shadows pulled itself closer, whispering promises soaked in deception. "You could be so much more. All you have to do is stay." The shadows turned dense around me, suffocating, pulsating as fear crescendoed within my chest. I realized with every ounce of clarity that this was not my sister, something dressed in her likeness, using my memories to entrap me. I stumbled backward, desperation surging as I turned to flee, but the darkness lunged forward, coiling around my legs with cruel intent. "Find her, find us," the chorus of voices cried, now a relentless storm, echoing deeper and deeper into the shadows, and with every calculated move, the writhing blackness dragged me down, dragging me closer, and closer to the edge of the abyss. As Claudia screamed my name, the last shred of my will tearing through the suffocating terror, I felt a jolt, a pull from that chilling darkness that no amount of refusal could fight. I was being yanked back into the void, back into the fold of despair, and in that moment, just as hope began to fade, the swirling shadows parted, revealing a door old and rotted with age standing ajar, glowing with that same haunting light. I took a breath, the intensity driving me forward, knowing this could be my last chance. But as I crossed the threshold, the door burst open like a dam, and something unnameable rushed out. The air shifted, replaced by the sharp scent of ash and despair, and the last thing I heard was the echo of Claudia's crying figure, "Run," but it was too late. The darkness consumed me whole. The world spun, the darkness swallowing sound and light alike, turning everything into an endless void of despair. As I drifted within it, I felt the cold seep deep into my bones, threading through every fiber of my being. Then, just as suddenly, I jolted free, tumbling onto a cold, hard floor that felt painfully real against my skin. I scrambled to my feet, gasping, the air sharp like ice in my lungs. I was in a different part of the warehouse, yet the oppressive weight of the shadows lingered, creeping along the edges of my vision. The corridor twisted grotesquely before me, a steely chill wrapping itself around my heart as I took in my surroundings. The faint light flickered above, but the pools of dark were deep and unwelcoming, shifting with a life of their own. "Claudia!" I cried, desperation ripping through my throat. The only reply was the heavy silence, pressing down like the weight of the world. The last glimpse of her face still haunted me, the mix of terror and urgency written on it, pulling me forward despite the tremors of fear coiling like a snake in my gut. With every cautious step, I could hear whispers brushing against my ears, sounding like echoes of the pasta jumbled mix of voices, distorted memories swirling through the stillness. "Come home," they beckoned, a melodic whisper that turned sinister as they layered over one another, tightening their grip around my sanity. That I pressed on, heart racing, each footfall muffled in the shadows, until I found a door, framed in darkness and flickering with a dim light. It creaked open with a loud groan, revealing a small room cluttered with remnants of a time long forgotten, old toys strewn about, photographs yellowing with age, and a dusty television set flickering disjointed images. Suddenly, I was struck by a wave of nostalgia mixed with unease. The photographs were those of us. I moved closer, tentatively picking one up. It was a picture from my childhood, a birthday party, full of laughter and warmth, but the faces began to melt, morphing into twisted nightmares. They stared back at me with hollow eyes, grinning widely as if mocking the innocence of that day. Horrified, I dropped the picture, watching it float like a feather to the ground. Then I noticed the television. The static was deafening, sharp sensations stabbing at my mind. I approached it, and as I did, the images sharpened into focus. Me mother, sitting in our living room, framed by flickering light, her face caught mid-laughter. I shuddered. It was as if she were looking straight at me. I could feel her warmth reaching out through the years. But as the image sharpened further, her laughter turned violent, twisting into a shriek that echoed off the walls and sent shards of panic coursing through my veins. No. I screamed, clutching my head as the room began to shake. The shadows surged from every corner, morphing into forms I didn't recognize, twisted snippets from memories I had long buried. "Let her out." A voice howled, barely human, layered with pain and regret. The television cracked and hissed like an angry serpent, and something heavy lurched in my gut, cut through my vision, enveloped by fear that these were not merely memories, they were imprisoning me in a cycle of suffering, reliving the worst moments. "Leave her alone," I shouted, the desperation tumbling out of me, fueling my rage. But the shadows only thickened, reaching out to ensnare me. Each movement of the figures echoed whispers of long-lost love, now twisted into agony, as if they thrived on my torment. Just as I thought I would be consumed, a bright light exploded from behind me, and for a fleeting moment, I felt the warmth of the sun. I wheeled around to see a small window, dusty and streaked with grime, the sun shining outside. My heart leapt. Maybe I could escape, find Claudia. After all that, I bolted toward the window, pulling at the frame with all my might, but the shadows coalesced around me, slithering up my legs like 1,000 serpents. "You can't leave. You belong to us," they hissed as I screamed, fighting against their grasp, my vision blurring. With hopelessness, then, just as I was about to be dragged back into darkness, the whispers shifted. "Find her, she is here. She needs you," the voices chorused gently amid the chaos, igniting a flicker of hope. Pushing through the clutches of despair and memories, I focused on the warmth of Claudia's presence, her voice burning bright in my mind. With a surge of adrenaline, I positioned my shoulder against the window frame and pushed with all my strength. The shadows screamed, releasing me just long enough to send me tumbling through the opening. The light poured over me as I fell into the unknown beyond the warehouse walls, the cacophony trailing like a distant nightmare. But just as I thought I was free, the ground disappeared beneath my feet. I fell into a dark abyss, where faces twisted in agony burst from shadows around me. Disembodied hands gripped my arms, and a bone-chilling realization washed over me. Was not leaving them behind. They were coming with me. As the darkness enveloped me once more, I heard Claudia's voice begging, pleading from somewhere within, "You must hold on. You have to find the truth." But what truth could remain when I was surrounded by so many lies? My heart pounded as I braced for impact, knowing that whatever awaited me in that seething darkness would define my fate. And just before I plunged into oblivion, a chilling whisper hissed against my ear, "Welcome home." The fall felt interminable, like descending through a never-ending tunnel of screams and anguish. As I landed with a bone-jarring thud, the disorienting darkness that enveloped me was starkly different from the cold void I had felt earlier. I was not alone. The shadows twisted and wriggled around me in a grotesque dance, a symphony of despair welcoming my arrival. I pushed myself up, my heart racing, scanning my new surroundings. The air was thick, drenched in an oppressive sense of foreboding. I noticed the landscape was an amalgam of distorted remnants, forgotten memories had morphed into something far more sinister. Rusted machinery, warped and ancient, loomed around me, each piece a fragment of despair that sang of forgotten labor and broken dreams. As I took tentative steps, the whispers returned coaxing, pleading, warning like distant echoes of tormented souls yearning for release. "They're watching," one wheezed, while another hissed, "They will take you too." My breath quickened, the sensation of being observed prickled against my skin. Turning swiftly, I spotted a flickering light towards what looked like an industrial hallway engulfed in shadows. I approached with caution, feeling the weight of eyes boring into my back. I could feel the pulse of life within the darkness, and it resonated with an ancient hunger. As I stepped further into the corridor, visions blurred my perception. Images of the warehouse spun around me, a kaleidoscope of past events that replayed like a film running off the reels. I saw Claudia again. Her face was drenched in tears, hands outstretched, as if trapped in a glass wall, unable to break through to me. Her voice echoed the plea, "Help me." Drawing closer, the ground beneath my feet began to tremble. Dim outlines emerged from the shadows, filling the void with grotesque shapes that morphed and contorted, taking form with a sickening fluidity. Their mouths moved but only silence emerged, a cacophony of despair that teetered on the edge of madness. The figures had faces of agony, eyes pleading for assistance while they were eternally tethered to the darkness. One of Thema gaunt silhouette with hollow cheeks stretched its shadowy hand towards me. "Find here or join us," it whispered, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. Panic surged, tightening like a vice around my throat. I stumbled backward, crashing into a pile of fragmented glass and rusted metal. The shards reflected glimpses of those I lost: a man, a girl, a whisper of a name. Each fragment a reminder of my spiraling descent into anguish. "Enough!" I shouted, my voice quaking with fury and fear. I had to break free from their grasp. I had to save Claudia. Summoning every ounce of courage, I charged deeper into the dark corridor, the whispers escalating into a horrifying chorus: "Run! Turn back!" Suddenly, a deafening roar erupted, shaking the infrastructure around me. The air thickened with dread, and I stumbled, grasping onto the cold, damp wall for support. A door loomed ahead, drenched in shadows but pulsing with a faint, eerie light. I felt a magnetic pull, a desperate need to reach for whatever lay behind that threshold. Taking a deep breath, I hurled myself at the door, crashing through with a force fueled by survival instincts. The room beyond was vast yet claustrophobic. It was a shrine to despair littered with remnants of lives long extinguished. Cobwebs draped across rusting gym equipment, and old photographs lined the walls, faces slowly peeling away like the remnants of a fever dream. There, amongst the sight of fading memories, I caught a glimpse of Claudia again, this time as if frozen in time, reaching out through the walls of framed fear. But as I closed the distance, a chilling realization dawned: the photographs weren't just fading, they were absorbing the light around them, consuming it in a malevolent thirst. Claudia's expression shifted from longing to terror, her eyes locking onto mine with a warning. "Don't trust them," she screamed, the room vibrating with her urgency. Just as I stretched out my hand, the floor quaked violently, splintering beneath me. The shadowy figures erupted from the walls, their forms dense with anguish, pulling at whomever they could ensnare. I was torn between saving her and escaping the encroaching darkness. As I weaved through the chaotic landscape, the room collapsed into chaos, and the shadows lunged forward, their mouths stretching wide, maw-like, echoing a triumphant roar. I knew I could feel it had whatever I chose next would decide my ultimate fate. Gripping the edge of the threshold, I hesitated, the weight of Claudia's presence pushing me toward either salvation or doom. And just as I realized the horrifying truth that the shadows didn't want me to leave, they wanted me to stay forever, a deafening silence descended. The shadows paused, and a low, menacing laughter unfurled all around me, enveloping me in dread. "Welcome to your new home," they savored, as everything plunged into darkness once more. Every inch of my skin tingled with dread as the chilling laughter faded, leaving a crushing silence that felt heavy enough to suffocate me. The absence of sound swallowed the world, as though time itself had veered off course, halting just outside that oppressive darkness. My heart pounded in my chest, the weight of the shadows was now palpable, a smothering fog that seemed to wrap around me like chains. Gingerly, I stepped back from the threshold that had temporarily offered a flicker of hope. The room that held Claudia transformed before my eyes into a charnel house, where despair festered among the skeletal remains of broken dreams. The light that had been pulsating behind the door snuffed out completely, leaving me to navigate the abyss without direction. I turned to flee, but the oppressive atmosphere snaked around me, tightening its grip with every panicked breath. As I stumbled away, the sound of my own footsteps echoed in a grotesque rhythm, an ominous metronome marking the tempo of my escalating fear. Yet, within the darkened corridor, I heard something else, a faint, rhythmic thudding that resonated from deep within the shadows. It pulsed with an unnatural beat, as if the very heart of this forsaken place thrummed beneath the ground. Instinctively, I crept towards the sound. Each tentative step felt heavier than the last, laden with dread and the whispers that began to rise again, an insidious chorus climbing in pitch, warning me, beckoning me. Help us, join her. I rounded a corner and stumbled into another room. This one was vastly different. It was vast and open but suffocated by an unnatural gloom. The source of the thudding was clearer here, and I could feel it vibrating through the dirt-strewn floor beneath me. Huge machinery rested in the corners, their blackened forms looming like malevolent sentinels. The thudding grew louder, more insistent, and my eyes darted around, attempting to find its origins. Then, in the dim light filtering through cracked windows, I spotted a figure. It loomed over something on the ground, its silhouette awkward and disjointed. The pounding continued in a steady rhythm, echoing the frantic beating of my heart. With coarse hairs standing on end, I moved closer, driven by a mixture of horror and morbid curiosity. Claudia. I called out, my voice breaking the suffocating silence once more. The figure paused, its head snapping in my direction. I took a cautious step back. There was something not right about the way it faced me. The looming figure shifted and twisted, elongating at impossible angles while the thudding crescendoed to an agonizing pulse. Help me, it rasped, the voice twisted and fragmented. I squinted, forcing the recognition through the fog of fear, and felt bile rise in my throat. It was a distortion of Claudia, her face grotesquely contorted, features tugged in unnatural directions. The shadows slithered around her, and the sight sent waves of nausea through my body. As I was about to scream, the figure reached out, and the shadows erupted around it, cascading like waves, lighter than a feather yet heavier than remorse. Join us, continue the cycle. They licked at my ankles like serpent tongues, whispering haunting tales of the damned. That I turned to run, but not fast enough. The shadows lunged forward, seizing my legs with a grip like ice. Helplessly, I felt myself being dragged towards the pulsing figure, the shadows wrapping around my chest, squeezing the breath from me. Please, you mustn't. I gasped, flailing against their unyielding grasp. A surge of adrenaline coursed through me, igniting a desperate energy that propelled me forward. With a feral scream, I hurled myself away, wrenching free from the clutches of despair that fought to pull me under. I dashed toward the only exit I could see, a door at the far end of the room, its outline beckoning like the last flicker of daylight in a storm. Just as I reached the threshold, I felt the air around me shift, and the shadows writhed in frustration. They surged, a flood of darkness seeking to reclaim their stolen prize. As I reached for the doorknob, strong fingers wrapped around my wrist, pulling me back with bone-snapping force. Panic surged anew, igniting every instinct I had to survive. I turned in desperation, ready to face my captor, but there was no body, only a smattering of shadow entwined with my form. Turn back. A familiar scream echoed in my head, an urgent warning that reverberated with torment. I knew then I was standing at the precipice of something far beyond revelation. "I'll never let you go," the voice hissed through gritted teeth, echoing my darkest fears. Just as terror threatened to consume me whole, the door slammed shut on its own accord, shrouding me in an eternal night once more, and then, silence enveloped me, a silence that twisted in agony as a gentle voice whispered, "You're part of the family now." I screamed, yet the sound was lost in an erupting darkness, as the shadows embraced me tightly, molding into new forms. Desperation clawed at my insides as I realized, in that moment of despair, what they truly desired for me. I was not merely a witness, I was the next offering. The silence shattered like glass, echoing in my ears as if it were the final breath of the damned. I was alone, yet very much not alone. The darkness throbbed around me, caressing my skin with an icy touch that seemed to seep into my very bones. Behind the eerie stillness, twisted laughter wormed its way into my mind, more sinister than anything I'd heard. In the engulfing blackness, I felt a shift. Shadows hovered at the edges of my vision, taunting me with movements just out of reach. They whispered in voices that were too sweet and far too tempting. "Join us, be with us, we will protect you." Each syllable slithered into my consciousness, melding with my own fears. Just as I pulled my thoughts together, remembering that I could not succumb to their dark allure, I heard a shrieking wail emerge from the depths of the warehouse. It was a sound laden with anguish, a symphony of suffering that beckoned me closer, despite my instincts urging me to flee. My heart raced as I pressed deeper into the restless shadows, drawn to the source of the lamentation. I emerged into another room, vast and cavernous, where the remnants of machinery loomed like the petrified silhouettes of beasts from a long-forgotten era. Their metal bodies were coated in layers of rust, a testament to the passage of time and the neglect that had sealed this place in perpetual darkness. Yet among the decaying monstrosities, I saw movement, something small and shivering against the far wall. As I inched closer, the overflowing dread washed over me like bile. In the flickering fragments of moonlight seeping through the cracked roof, I discerned a child, no older than 7 or 8, sitting among the debris. She trembled, her thin frame hunched in a defensive gesture, and I could see her wide, frightened eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Help me," she whimpered, her voice impossibly thin, yet filled with desperate urgency. "They won't let me go." The shadows behind her writhed and twisted, making no attempt to disguise their predatory nature. Slowly, I reached towards her, reconsidering the ominous entities that had snared me. "Who won't let you go?" I whispered, though a part of me believed I was sinking deeper, entangling myself in their insatiable hunger. "The shadow people," she replied, barely above a breath, her voice quaking. "They take you if you stay too long." "I am not going to stay," I promised, my voice trembling. "They'll get you out of here." As if in response to my words, the shadows around us recoiled momentarily, then surged forward with an insatiable rage. The temperature dropped, plunging me into a frost that gnawed at my flesh. I felt the cold creep into my throat, choking my pleas for escape. "Run!" I shouted to her, and at that moment, the girl stood. Her small feet were bare, stained with dirt and fear as she darted toward me, the darkness swirling in angry whispers around our ankles. The girl lunged forward, and as our hands clasped together, the shadows screamed an unholy cacophony that reverberated through my skull. Light blinked out of existence with each anguish-laden cry, and a flood of dread consumed us like a tidal wave. Suddenly, the girl's hand went limp in mine, and as I turned to face her, her expression twisted from terror to something unidentifiable. Her lips curled, revealing a wide grin that sent a jolt through my spine. "You shouldn't have tried to save me," she said, her voice morphing into a low, velvety tone laced with malice. "Now you're one of us." In a flash, I felt myself being jerked back, no longer able to hold on to the semblance of reality. The shadows surged around us, slipping between my fingers as the girl faded into the depths of their embrace, her laughter intermingling with the chaos. I was losing her, losing myself, spiraling into a realm where the line between the living and the dead blurred to nothing. "Help us," came the chorus of voices, melded and hollow, rising up like a tide demanding its due. Panic surged once more. I stumbled back, my mind racing for an escape, but the darkened grip tightened around my legs, pulling me toward the unholy heart of the nightmare emerging within the warehouse. Just as I thought I would be consumed completely, a blinding flash erupted around me, illuminating the silhouettes momentarily. In that fleeting vision, I saw the flickering forms of countless souls, trapped and interwoven within the Shadowsa tangled web of anguish. And then I recognized them. Every empty face had belonged to someone once. No. Release me. I screamed, desperation surpassing my sanity, trembling with the weight of all those who had come before. I felt the walls of the warehouse shift, bending under the pressure of my terror, as I was pulled closer and closer to the epicenter of the infernal gathering. As the shadows howled around me, an icy breath whispered in my ear, chilling me to the core. Welcome home, and then it hit me, the terrifying truth my own reflection glinted back in the eyes of those lost souls, mingled within the seething darkness that enveloped me. They were no longer just reflections, they were a part of me. No. And then, just as the shadows awakened to claim their prize, the warehouse shook violently, an otherworldly roar echoing through the enclosed space. From the void, the very ground beneath trembled as a blinding light flickered to life, illuminating the darkness for one horrifying instant. Time seemed to stand still as I felt the shadows pulling harder than ever, drawing me into their eternal embrace. Just then, as the splendor of light dimmed and I was swallowed back into the dark abyss, a vision struck me. A single name echoed over and over in my mind, Claudia. In that moment, I realized, I was not escaping, I was summoning something, a force beyond my understanding. And soon, I would have to face the true horror of what being part of the family meant. As the darkness closed in, I felt the whispering presence swell within me, and I understood in sheer terror, I was both the hunter and the hunted. The air crackled around me, a lingering tension as the shadows drew tight, eager to enclose their newest captive. I gasped, each breath a labor on a throat constricted by an unseen torment. Claudia. Who was she? An image flashed in my mind, a fleeting spirit, laughing and twirling in the sunlight, but as quickly as it came, it was lost to the oblivion surrounding me. The momentary light had shown me something, though, a glimmer that tore through the fog of uncertainty. I could feel the very soul of the warehouse pulsating around me, an entity tethered to this realm, powerful and sinister, like a heart that beat in rhythm with my own mounting dread. I was not merely stuck in a nightmare, I was a player in some twisted game that trapped the unwary, and the stakes had never been clearer. Claudia. I whispered, the name laden with a depth of longing. Was she my sister? A friend? The shadows recoiled, a wave of revulsion rippling through them. They seemed to shudder, drawn once again to my pulse, seeking a way to entwine me further within their rimy embrace. The whispers became clearer, forming a sinister melody that echoed through the vastness of the warehouse. Words twisted and contorted, wrapping around each other like vines strangling a dying tree, their meaning agonizingly close yet forever out of reach. Find her, save her, bring her to us. I struggled against the tidal forces of despair threatening to engulf me, thoughts of Claudia blossoming into a surge of determination. Whatever force lay behind those shadows, it was holding not just me but the memory of her captive. If I could uncover the truth of her and this intangible bond we shared, perhaps the shackles binding the darkness would fray. Let me go. I screamed, fighting against the gripping shadows that entwined my legs, pulling me deeper into their malevolent vortex. My desperation spilled over, coursing through me with pulsing urgency. I will not be your prisoner, a vile laughter reverberated, filling the air with an icy venom that made my skin crawl. Yours is not a choice. It was the voice of the shadows, thick with mockery and satisfaction. One must always pay a price, and before I could brace myself, they surged forward, enveloping me in a storm of anguish and wailing souls, pushing me to the ground. I scrambled, fingers clawing at the concrete, but I was met with slick, hard surfaces slickening beneath my palms, slick with something dark and foreign blood, or something far worse, like the ichor of forgotten entities. I could feel it seeping under my fingernails as I frantically shoved against the ground, desperate for escape, the flickering light returning, a pulse of white radiance scorching through the dark like a spear. In that moment of blinding clarity, I glimpsed the faces of the damned imprinted on the warehouse walls, their eyes hollow but desperate, mouths twisted in silent screams. Among those empty visages, I saw her, a figure fumbling through the shadows, reaching for me. Claudia. I cried, the name bursting from my lips like a firework against the encroaching shadows. I'm coming for you. My heart resonated with purpose, igniting a fierce resolve that shattered the oppressive gloom. The ground under me trembled, the foundation of the warehouse groaning with discontent. The air thickened with specters, swirling with new fervor. My declaration had rattled the very core of their sinister grip. They surged toward me, but something shifted within the darkness, it retreated as if stung by my determination. No. You will not take her. I rose to my feet, adrenaline pumping through my veins, a surge of vitality potent enough to spark defiance in the hearts of the lost. I tore my way through the shadows, feeling them falter beneath the weight of my will, glimmers of light battling the encroaching darkness, yet in my haste, I caught glimpses of the other prisoners, their faces familiar, haunted, as if they were echoes of my own past. Each one bore an unmistakable likeness to someone I had loved, family, friends all lost, all entwined in this web where hope had been swallowed whole. I was kneeling before a flickering dream, a lost ember of a flame that shimmered beautifully through the abyss, when behind me a gargantuan figure emerged, a creature of sinewy horror, towering and draped in shadows that dripped like viscous oil. It moved with deliberate grace, every silent step echoing with a sense of authority that paralyzed me. Your resolve is commendable, it hissed, breath cold as a grave. Its voice was entwined with the whispers of the souls left behind, each syllable an echo of misery. But you will learn that the shadows do not yield easily. Then, in an instant, it dropped its cloak of darkness, and I was hit with a wave of despair so palpable I dropped to my knees, purged of strength. The weight of eternity pressed down upon me, and a single heartbeat pulsed in my ears, racing, panicked the sound of the walls trembling, the moans of lost souls merging with drowned echoes as the creature extended a shadowy limb toward me, and in that moment, the air snapped, crackled, something else flickered into view, blackened wings, vast and slithering like smoke. Your sister is lost to the shadows unless you pay the price, it growled, an ominous grin splitting its horrid visage. Claudia. My voice became a mantra, fueling the desperate rhythm of my heart. Collecting every shred of defiance I could muster, I locked eyes with the creature, determined to reclaim my right, the right to fight, even if it would cost me everything. But before I could utter another word, a bone-chilling laughter echoed from everywhere and nowhere at once, resonating within me like a death knell, drowning my hope in a murmur of despair, and I froze as the shadows coalesced around me, threatening to obliterate the last remnants of light. As my vision dimmed, I felt something sweep across my memory, vivid and incomprehensible. A child's laughter, sweet yet haunted, twisted in the corners of my consciousness until it snapped back, wrapped in the sinister whispers of the shadows. Join us. I was caught, I was ensnared. I had no choice but to face what was coming. A chasm of darkness yawned before me, an inescapable void, and just as I opened my mouth to cry out for Claudia one last time, into that abyss, I fell. I fell, weightless and adrift, engulfed in an impenetrable blackness that curled around me like a lover's embrace, both seductive and vile. Time twisted and slipped through my fingers, stretching infinitely as I plummeted into that abyss. The cacophony of despair grew muffled, until a solitary thought rang clear in my mind: Claudia. I had to find her. The darkness thickened, and suddenly, I was yanked free, crashing onto a cold, damp surface. I gasped, air rushing into my lungs, sharp and electric. My surroundings ignited with an eerie glow, revealing a room, or perhaps a chamber, suffocated in shadows, walls lined with peeling paint, cracked concrete glistening with moisture, and an oppressive stillness hanging like a weight atop my chest. Silhouettes danced in the corners of my vision, flickering in and out like dying stars. My heart pounded like a war drum as I scrambled to my feet, scanning my prison for signs of life. Claudia's face, a glimpse of hope. For a moment, I thought I was alone. The whispered malignancy that had enveloped me was gone, leaving only silence. But the stillness felt pregnant, heavy with anticipation, as if the shadows were waiting, watching, biding their time. Then, from the far end of the room, the air shifted. A figure slowly emerged from the gloom, a woman, hair cascading like spilled ink, eyes wide and reflective, a look of pure terror etched upon her features. My breath caught in my throat as recognition settled in. It was Claudia. Help me! She cried, her voice tremulous, straining against the cloying silence. I lunged toward her, but as I crossed the threshold into the light of the chamber, a searing pain shot through my chest. I stumbled back, gasping, as layers of shadow peeled away from the walls, revealing an expansive mural of torment, faces twisted in agony, hands reaching out as if begging for salvation. Stay back. Claudia shrieked, but her admonition fell flat as I desperately laced my fingers with mine, proving that we were still tethered in a world untethered by the familiar. Something is coming, I felt it before I could see it, a palpable dread, like a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. The shadows flickered, coiling back and forth, as if sensing a disturbance in their domain. Claudia, I thought I lost you. We can escape together. My fingers brushed against hers, and for a brief moment, I thought I felt warmth returning to my soul, a flicker of hope. But then, I caught sight of her eyes. Hers were not the eyes I remembered. They were vacant, clouded by something unfathomable. No. She screamed, swatting my hand away, you don't understand. It's not safe. You'll bring it here. A towering figure loomed behind her, darkness swirling like a sentient entity. It twisted and contorted, amalgamating into a grotesque shape that defied nature, wings like night unfurling behind it, sharp and jagged, casting a pall over the damp room. Its voice rippled like thunder, resonating with the very core of my being. She belongs to me, little one. As do you. Chilled to the bone, I staggered back, mind racing. What do you want? Let her go. My voice trembled, desperate yet tinged with an ember of defiance. The entity's laugh deepened the shadow that enveloped the room, echoing like a chorus of damned souls. Claudia is bound to this place, and so shall you be unless you offer up a piece of your past. The words dripped with sickening malice, twisting through the air like tendrils of smoke. What do you mean? I croaked, the bond between us pulsing painfully. What do I have to give? Memories, regrets, the creature hissed, voice slithering through my brain, grasping at the threads of my history. The darkness hungers like the lost, and your fear is a delicacy that I felt the weight of my childhood flash before my eyes, moments spent in laughter, in love, clutched tightly in my mind, but the shadows loomed larger, threatening to peel away those precious fragments, offering them up to the abyss that hungered for my essence. Suddenly, Claudia's silhouette flickered, collapsing into a distorted mirage. Don't do it. Please. If you give in, it wins. The room vibrated violently, walls shuddering with a dark laughter that echoed all around me. I was teetering on the edge of oblivion, every heartbeat a countdown to tragedy as the creature's eyes burned with appetite, waiting for my decision. Let her go, take me instead. I shouted, grasping at threads of courage. The creature paused, intrigued, lips curling in a wicked smile. We shall see a choice made in dread. But know this, the bargain will be steep. As I scrambled for my thoughts, torn between light and dark, Claudia's image flickered again, fading into nothingness. And just as the room erupted into chaos, shadows spiraled with heightened frenzy around me. I felt them clawing at my mind, prying open secrets long buried, the faces of those I had wronged, the regrets that had festered like open wounds. No. I howled, clinging to whatever shreds of my identity remained. I will not surrender. And then an unearthly wail erupted from the maw of the infernal creature, echoing through the void, bringing forth a horde of wretched forms, all gnashing teeth and hollow eyes, emerging to demand my sacrifice. The darkness surged, pulling me under, and as I fought against the tide, I heard Claudia's voice, fragile yet defiant, cutting through the din. Don't forget me. In that instant, an overwhelming surge of resolve took hold. I would not let the shadows consume me. Even as the haunted figure of my sister distorted and flickered, I hurled myself against the shadows again, ready to face the encroaching terror head-on, determined to unearth a truth that would transcend even the madness surrounding me. But, in the very moment I thought I could fight back, the ground beneath me cracked, opening into a gaping chasm threatening to swallow me whole, and as the darkness swallowed my scream, I realized with dread that I would soon learn the true cost of my defiance. As I plummeted into an endless void, I felt both fear and an unsettling clarity. I grasped at memories, letting the echoes of a lost childhood rush past me, each one intertwined with the familiar laughter of Claudia, the warmth of my mother's embrace, and the aching shadows that had haunted our family. I could no longer distinguish real from memory, nor light from dark, as I fell deeper into that unsettling abyss. When the world finally solidified around me again, I gasped, finding myself flung into the very heart of that sinister warehouse, the air thick with a swirling miasma of dread and despair. I rose from the ground, dazed yet driven by a primal instinct to find Claudia. But the sight before me twisted the hollow pit in my stomach. The hall was lined with the remnants of lost souls, each stuck in their cyclical torment like gnarled trees growing toward a light that never came. Their mouths twisted in eternal screams, yet their voices came through like a horrific lullaby. It was a chorus of anguish that pricked at my sanity. I staggered forward, desperate to liberate Claudia from this hell, feeling the shadows close in behind me. "Claudia!" I cried, putting one foot in front of the other, pushing against the sensation of being watched from all sides. The faces of the lost turned toward me, their eyes filled with a grotesque mixture of hope and despair. Each step felt heavy, thickening the atmosphere around me as reality wavered like a sickly mirage. Then, from the shadows, she emerged, Claudia, standing at the far end, eyes wide with a terror I had never wished to see. "You shouldn't have come back," she screeched, her voice piercing through the cacophony surrounding us. I reached for her, bewildered, feeling the bonds of fear tightening around my heart. "Claudia, I will get you out. I promise." But as I closed the distance, something shifted within her. The warmth of her spirit began to chill, her features warping, transforming into a mask of terror and indifference. "She is ours now," a guttural voice echoed, resonating from the shadows surrounding her, the entity slowly taking form, twisted, dark, with hollow eyes filled with raging hunger and disdain for what I had become. "You cannot save what has already been claimed." Sudden realization, the sight of the shadows cresting around them ignited something deep within me, a swell of anger and the immense urge to push back. "You have no power over us," I shouted, defiance filling my veins. But in retort, the entity raised its arms, dreadful shadows thrashing about as tendrils crept closer. "You tread a dangerous path. The price for defiance is steep." Before I could comprehend the reality of those words, it pulled at the fraying ties of my past, ripping away the fabric of my memories, the ghost-like faces of friends and family emerging from the void, screaming my name in anguish, begging me to return, to stop this madness. With every recollection, it siphoned away pieces of my soul, heavy fragments that clung like chains to my being. That I gasped as agonizing clarity struck. The memories were not mine alone, every shadow bore witness to the events leading to Claudia's disappearance. I realized now, my sister was not a mere captive, she embodied the sorrow this place harvested. "Let her go!" I screamed, voice cracking, as I clutched my head, fighting against the tide pulling me down. That I looked at Claudia, her eyes, once filled with joy, now haunted and empty. "You're just like them. You're bound to this place," I said, desperation cracking my resolve. I couldn't shake the feeling that a betrayal deeper than blood coursed between us, but as I stepped closer, her twisted laughter filled the void, echoing with a jarring intensity. "Join us," she said with a sickening smoothness, her expression flickering between recognition and something much darker. That I recoiled, staggering backward. "You're not my sister. You can't be." The creeping darkness throbbed in rhythm with my heart, an insatiable void that clawed at my sanity. She was a puppet, strings held by the very shadows that enveloped us. "Every soul claims its price," the entity hissed, and with that, I felt the chains tighten across my chest, drawing me inward toward the maw of despair, dragging me to a point of no return. "No!" I screamed. Gathering what strength remained, I charged past the shadows, ignoring the engulfing darkness that reached for me like ravenous claws. I could feel their insidious whispers clawing at my mind, that sinister melody demanding my surrender. My gaze locked onto Claudia's fading figure, whose eyes flickered with glimpses of hatred and sorrow intertwined. "Fight it!" I called out, pushing against the weight that sought to claim me. "You're stronger than this," but with each word, she shrank into a malevolent and Titian echo of the past wrapped in darkness, the embodiment of this abyss. I reached for her again, but the shadows erupted, encompassing me. One final scream escaped her lips before they enveloped her entirely. And then, I experienced a horrifying truth. Every scream, every tormented cry merged into one scream. They all belonged to me. I was not just a witness, I was an integral part of this horror, threadbare in the fabric of shadows, inheriting every bit of loss and regret. With wide eyes, I became acutely aware of what I had unwittingly invited into my life. The relinquished memories were not just exposed, they were inherent, rooted within my existence. The weight was unbearable, collapsing under the gravity of despair. And then understand surged through me. Claudia was never lost, she had become part of the shadow realm. I was bound by that same cycle, a deluge of despair that would ensnare anyone who dared to enter it was the curse of the warehouse. The realization burned through me, the shadows shifted alongside my growing horror, the laughter spiraled around me like a cyclone, resonating with malicious glee. Welcome home. As the darkness closed in once more heralding my fate, a chilling truth lingered. I had come to save Claudia, yet, in that desperate act, I had sealed my own doom. And the last thing echoing in my mind as everything turned to dark was Claudia's haunting smile, twisted, forever altered, a reflection of what I had become. Welcome home.